The quantum navigation officer on the council station traced the energy patterns with growing excitement. The signature is unlike anything we've cataloged in the Universal Database, Eldervox. It appears to be a primitive form of dimensional inversion, but with patterns that violate three fundamental laws of cosmic physics. Eldervox's multifaceted eyes narrowed as he studied the patterns. This defies all established science from the last 50 millennia. Send me everything about this. Earth. Within moments, his neural interface filled with data about the blue-green planet and its dominant species. Humans had only recently ventured beyond their atmosphere, their technology laughably primitive by council standards. They still relied on chemical propulsion for most space travel, and their understanding of dimensional physics was rudimentary at best. They're barely into their space age, Eldervox muttered. Their quantum theories are mostly theoretical guesswork. Yet the energy signature coming from their research facilities couldn't be explained away. Somehow, these humans had stumbled upon principles that the Council's greatest minds had deemed mathematically impossible. Prepare a first contact protocol, Eldervox commanded. Priority Alpha 1. The Council assistants exchanged alarmed glances. Alpha 1 protocols were reserved for existential threats to the galaxy itself. Elder, with respect, ventured a young Medusan diplomat. These humans have no knowledge of the wider universe. Their social development suggests they might react with fear or hostility to sudden contact. We have no choice, Eldervox replied grimly. Look at the latest Cascade progression models. The main display updated to show the Void Cascade's expansion path. A sickening realization spread through the chamber as they saw the projection. Earth lay directly in the Cascade's path, with only months before it would be consumed. The humans don't know it yet, but they're already fighting for survival, Eldervox said. And they may have accidentally discovered the only weapon that can save us all. Ambassador Zixthar's ship preparation bay bustled with activity as the most advanced stealth vessel in the Council fleet was readied for immediate departure. He reviewed the first contact protocols while technicians loaded specialized communication and translation equipment. We're integrating the latest human language and cultural databases, his chief linguist reported. But their fractured political structure presents challenges. They have no unified world government to approach. Then we identify their leading scientific authorities, Zixthar replied. The energy signatures point to a specific research facility. We'll make contact there first. As the launch countdown began, Zixthar received an urgent message from Eldervox. The cascade has accelerated again, the Elder's projection warned. You have less time than we thought. Whatever these humans have discovered, you must secure their cooperation quickly. The fate of all known civilizations now rests with a species that doesn't even know we exist. The massive council ship slipped into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind a shimmering distortion in space. Its destination, a small blue planet whose inhabitants had no idea they were about to become central players in a cosmic drama billions of years in the making. Meanwhile, in her underground laboratory on Earth, Dr. Eliza Chen made the final adjustments to her experimental setup, completely unaware that her controversial research had just caught the attention of the most powerful beings in the universe. Dr. Chen stared at the quantum barrier simulation results, unable to believe what she was seeing. The barrier had repelled the test energy completely, something her theoretical framework had suggested was impossible. She ran her hands through her short black hair, her mind racing with implications. Marco, did you alter any of the parameters? She asked, eyes never leaving the display. Her assistant shook his head. Everything's exactly as you specified. I've run it 3 times now with identical results. The lab door burst open as Dr. Rivera, the facility's security director, rushed in. Eliza, we've got a situation. Military jets are being scrambled worldwide. Something massive just entered our atmosphere over the Pacific. Chen's eyes widened. Is it related to your experiment? I don't know, but the timing is suspicious as hell, Rivera replied, bringing up satellite footage on the main screen. The silver ship that appeared on the display moved with impossible grace, effortlessly evading intercept attempts as it changed course toward North America. Chen felt her heart hammering in her chest as she noticed the object's trajectory calculations displayed in the corner of the screen. "It's coming here," she whispered. "Directly here." Within hours, the International Space Research Initiative was surrounded by military vehicles, news helicopters hovering at the perimeter. Dr. Chen found herself escorted to an emergency meeting with General Williams and representatives from 17 nations who had arrived via supersonic transport. "We've established a communications line with the vessel," the UN secretary announced as Chen took her seat. "They're requesting to speak with you specifically, Dr. Chen." Before she could respond, the room's main display activated on its own, revealing Ambassador Zixthar. Several officials gasped at the alien's translucent form and floating internal organs. Chen found herself mesmerized by the crystalline patterns pulsing within the being's tissue. "Dr. Eliza Chen," the alien's voice resonated with musical harmonics. "Your quantum experiments have created ripples through dimensions that should be impossible to access with your level of technology." General Williams rose from his chair, face flushed with anger. "What is your purpose here? Is this an invasion?" The alien's skin pulsed with colors Chen somehow intuited were expressing something like sad amusement. "If we wished to conquer your world, General, we would not announce ourselves so openly." Zixthar turned his attention back to Chen. "We come seeking your help. All life in the universe faces extinction, including yours." "That's absurd," snapped the Chinese representative. "You claim to need our help while clearly possessing technology centuries beyond our own." Zixthar activated the small device in what might have been a hand. The conference room vanished, replaced by the terrifying vision of Earth breaking apart. Chen watched in horror as continents shattered, oceans boiled away into nothingness, and billions of lives ended in moments. She could see families running, children screaming as reality itself unraveled around them. When the vision ended, several officials were openly weeping. General Williams had gone pale, his previous bluster evaporated. "What was that?" Chen asked, her scientific mind fighting through the emotional impact. "A time-shifted recording of your world's future," Zixthar replied solemnly. "In 36 cycles, what you would call months, this will be Earth's fate when the void cascade reaches your solar system." Chen leaned forward, mind already working through the problem. "And you believe my research can prevent this?" The ambassador's body pulsed with what seemed like hope. "We believe your approach to dimensional physics, your species' unique perspective, may be the only thing that can save us all." The revelation of Milo's river analogy sparked a frenzy of activity throughout the Europa facility. Council scientists who had dismissed human insights now crowded around the simple sketches, their advanced imaging technology analyzing the comparisons between water erosion patterns and void cascade expansion. "This changes everything," Dr. Chen said, addressing the joint research team. "Instead of trying to stop or destroy the cascade, we redirect its flow like a river." Chief Scientist Vex Moore's skin rippled with reluctant acknowledgement patterns. "The model has merit, but implementation remains mathematically impossible. Creating dimensional redirection structures would require energy manipulation beyond even our capabilities." Milo, emboldened by the sudden attention, stood up. "With respect, sir, I think you're still approaching this from the wrong direction. We don't need to create new structures. We can use existing dimensional fault lines." A confused murmur spread through the alien scientists. Dr. Chen smiled with pride as her young intern pulled up the cascade progression maps. "Look here and here," Milo said, pointing to subtle patterns in the dimensional fabric that the Council's sophisticated models had categorized as background noise. "These aren't random fluctuations. They're natural boundaries between dimensional planes, like the banks of a river." Chen stepped forward. "What if we enhance these natural boundaries, strengthen them selectively to guide the cascade away from inhabited space?" The ethereal scientists exchanged glances, their translucent bodies pulsing with patterns of consideration. One elder scientist approached the display, manipulating the controls with delicate tentacles. The boy might be correct, he acknowledged, creating a new simulation incorporating Milo's theory. Our models always filtered these patterns as irrelevant because they don't follow established dimensional laws. But if we accept their existence as valid. The simulation ran, showing the cascade's energy flow diverted along the enhanced natural boundaries, like a river changing course when its banks are reinforced. It works in theory, Chen said, excitement building in her voice. But how do we actually enhance these natural boundaries? Quantum resonance, offered Dr. Lakshmi Patel, another human physicist who had been studying ethereal crystalline technology. The Council's quantum stabilizing crystals could be modified to amplify the natural boundaries if placed at strategic points. The room erupted into technical discussions, with teams forming spontaneously around different aspects of the problem. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists, each contributing their unique perspective. Ambassador Zixthar observed from the doorway, his crystalline form pulsing with complex emotions. Elder Vox joined him, watching the unprecedented collaboration with amazement. "I've never seen anything like this," the ancient being admitted. "These humans have fundamentally changed our research methodology in less than a lunar cycle." "It's more than their ideas," Zixthar replied. "It's how they think. They draw connections between seemingly unrelated fields, hydrology and dimensional physics, geology and cosmic structures. They incorporate analogies and metaphors that our specialized scientific approach would never consider. If we survive this," Elder Vox said quietly, "the Council must reevaluate our entire educational system. We've been training specialists for so long, we've lost the ability to see the connections between disciplines." In the center of the activity, Milo sketched new ideas while the most advanced minds in the universe eagerly gathered around, asking questions and building upon his insights. The young intern caught Dr. Chen's eye across the room and gave a small, disbelieving smile. For the first time since the cascade began, hope flickered through the research facility, an emotion so foreign to the Council scientists that many couldn't identify the strange sensation spreading through their consciousness. Captain Hassan's approach revolutionized the quantum redirection array construction effort across the galaxy. Within days, shipyards and manufacturing facilities that had stood paralyzed by impossible material requirements began producing smaller, imperfect, but functional array components. "The containment doesn't need to be permanent," Hassan explained to the Council's engineering corps. "It just needs to hold long enough for us to find and address the source." In a vast assembly bay on the Europa facility, Hassan stood before a three-dimensional projection of the galaxy, directing deployment teams with the precision of a battlefield commander. Color-coded routes showed supply chains and construction squadrons moving with coordinated efficiency that amazed the Council observers. "Sector 4 is falling behind schedule," she noted, highlighting a region where array deployment lagged. "Divert the Talaxian construction fleet from Sector 7 to assist." A Vox administrator approached hesitantly. "Captain, the Talaxian fleet has strict operational parameters. Diverting them requires 17 approval protocols from 3 different Council committees." Hassan didn't look up from her console. "We don't have time for committees. Tell the Talaxians the command comes directly from me under Emergency Override Protocol Alpha." "But you don't have authority to." "Check your update," Hassan interrupted, finally meeting the administrator's gaze. "The Council granted me full deployment authority this morning. Either help me save the universe or get out of my way." The administrator retreated, and Dr. Chen joined Hassan at the command station. "You're ruffling a lot of feathers," Chen noted with a small smile. "Feathers, tentacles, and whatever else they have," Hassan replied. "But we're making progress. The first test array network is ready for activation in the Andromeda approach sector." They made their way to the observation deck where Council representatives had gathered to witness the test. The atmosphere was tense. Many believed the human approach would fail catastrophically, wasting precious resources and time. "The arrays are powering up," announced the technical officer, her voice carrying throughout the chamber. Quantum entanglement network established at 67% efficiency. That's not enough, whispered an ethereal scientist. The calculations required at least 90%. Hassan stepped forward. Proceed with the test. On the massive display, they watched as the array network activated, thousands of small units working in concert to create a dimensional barrier against the approaching cascade. The energy requirements were enormous, causing power fluctuations throughout the station. For several agonizing minutes, nothing seemed to happen. The cascade continued its relentless advance toward the protected sector. It's not working, the ethereal scientist stated, turning away. As predicted. Then Milo, who had been studying the readings intently, shouted, "Look at the edge formation. The pattern is changing." All eyes turned back to the display. The cascade's leading edge had indeed begun to waver, its perfect consumption pattern developing distortions. "It's responding," Chen breathed. "The river is changing course." Slowly, unmistakably, the deadly void began to curve away from the protected sector, following the path of least resistance created by the array network. A stunned silence fell over the observation deck, followed by a growing wave of exclamations in a dozen alien languages. The victory was tempered by immediate concerns. Warning indicators flashed across multiple displays as the arrays reported structural stress. "The quantum entanglement is destabilizing," the technical officer reported. "Projected array failure in approximately 17 days. Hassan nodded grimly. "That's our window then. 2 weeks to find the source and stop it permanently." She turned to Chen. Time to prepare for a journey into the void itself. Chen looked around at the celebrating aliens, then back at Hassan's determined expression. "You already have a ship ready, don't you?" Hassan's lips curved into a slight smile. "The Prometheus has been prepped since day one. I never doubted we'd need to take the fight directly to the source." The Prometheus pushed deeper into uncharted void, passing the boundary where the most advanced Council exploration vessels had turned back. Day 51 of the mission brought new horrors as the laws of physics became increasingly unreliable. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Okafor, the ship's chief science officer, stared at her instruments in disbelief. "Captain, we're registering temporal variance throughout the ship. Engineering is experiencing time at a different rate than the bridge." Hassan's face remained impassive despite the impossible readings. "How much variance?" "Almost 3 minutes per hour and increasing," Okafor replied. "At this rate, we'll have sections of the ship existing in different timeframes within days." Ambassador Zixtar's crystalline form had dulled during the journey, his once vibrant patterns now muted and sluggish. "We should turn back," he said, his melodic voice now discordant. No conscious being was meant to perceive these regions of reality. The ship shuddered as another spatial anomaly passed through the hull. Alarms blared as atmosphere vented from a compartment that suddenly intersected with vacuum despite being in the ship's center. "Seal off sections 20 through 23, Hassan ordered calmly. "Reroute life support through secondary systems." Dr. Chen entered the bridge, dark circles under her eyes from days without proper sleep. The constant shifts in reality were taking their toll on everyone, but the humans seemed to adapt better than their alien companions. The Medusan scientist had retreated into a self-induced coma after witnessing his own tentacle both alive and decayed simultaneously. "The aliens are struggling more than we are," Chen observed quietly to Hassan. "Their minds are too ordered, too dependent on consistent laws of physics." Hassan nodded. "Humans have always lived with uncertainty. Maybe that's our advantage here." A violent tremor rocked the ship, sending several crew members sprawling. The main view screen flickered with images that hurt the mind to perceive. Geometries that shouldn't exist, colors outside the visible spectrum somehow made visible. "Dimensional boundary approaching," Milo announced from his station, somehow maintaining focus despite the chaos. "The source is just beyond." Hassan steadied herself against her command chair. "All hands, prepare for boundary crossing. This will be unpleasant." The understatement of the millennium, Chen thought as reality itself seemed to tear around them. For a moment that stretched into subjective eternity, every crew member experienced their own consciousness fragmented across multiple possibilities, lives they might have lived, deaths they might have died, all simultaneously real and unreal. Then, abruptly, stability returned. A stunned silence fell over the bridge as everyone reintegrated their fractured perceptions. "Status report," Hassan commanded, her voice only slightly strained. "We've crossed the boundary," Okafor reported, checking her instruments. "Physics appears somewhat normal again, but with significant differences. Quantum probability has collapsed into singular states. Visual confirmation," announced Navigator Jenkins, her voice filled with awe. "Captain, you need to see this." The view screen cleared to reveal an impossible structure floating in the void, a massive crystalline construct with angles that seemed to bend back upon themselves. It pulsed with energies that made the ship's sensors struggle to interpret. Around it moved beings of pure light and geometry, existing partially in dimensions beyond human perception. Chen moved to the front of the bridge, mesmerized. "The harvesting machine," she whispered. "And those must be the entities operating it." Ambassador Zixthar joined her, his form brightening slightly in the presence of more stable physics. "In all our history, no council species has ever encountered sentient beings from beyond our dimensional plane." "Well," Hassan said, rising from her chair, "time for proper introductions. Let's hope they're in a talking mood." The crystalline entities showed no reaction to the tiny vessel that had impossibly entered their domain. To them, the Prometheus was less than an insect. It was a subatomic particle, utterly beneath notice. "They don't even know we're here," Chen realized with growing dread. "How do you negotiate with beings that can't even perceive your existence?" Lieutenant Reyes studied the crystalline entities with the same focused intensity she once applied to deciphering lost human languages in remote Amazonian tribes. For 3 days, she had barely slept, consuming stimulants to stay awake as she analyzed every subtle shift and pattern in the action's movements. "Their communication isn't language as we understand it," she explained to the increasingly desperate crew gathered in the ship's conference room. "It's pure mathematical resonance across multiple dimensions." Captain Hassan leaned forward. "Can we replicate it?" "Not exactly," Reyes admitted. "But I've been watching how they interact with their environment. They respond to certain patterns of dimensional disturbance. It's like they're feeling vibrations we can't perceive." Dr. Chen's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "Like how a deaf person might feel music through vibrations rather than hearing it." "Exactly," Reyes nodded excitedly. "We can't speak their language, but we might be able to create vibrations they can feel." For the next 36 hours, Reyes worked with engineer Rodriguez to modify the ship's experimental dimensional drive. They reprogrammed it to create specific ripple patterns in the fabric of reality itself, essentially drawing massive symbols in the dimensional substrate. "This first pattern translates roughly to 'we exist,'" Reyes explained as they prepared for the first communication attempt. "It's the most basic concept I could distill from studying their interactions." Hassan gave the order, and the modified drive activated, sending powerful ripples through the dimensional fabric. The energy drain was enormous, causing lights to flicker throughout the ship. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. Then, without warning, one of the crystalline entities altered its path, moving in what appeared to be a deliberate pattern near the Prometheus. "They noticed us," Milo exclaimed. "Not exactly us," Reyes cautioned, "but they noticed the disturbance pattern. It's like they're investigating a strange sound." The entity, appearing as a constantly shifting geometric form of light and crystal, created its own ripple pattern in response. The ship's sensors struggled to interpret the complex multi-dimensional message. I think they're asking what we are," Reyes said, her voice uncertain. Over the next several days, an excruciatingly slow exchange developed. Each message took hours to transmit and interpret, with countless failures and misunderstandings. The council representatives grew increasingly frustrated with the primitive communication method, but the humans persisted with remarkable patience. 3 million years of evolution as social animals makes us uniquely qualified for this, Dr. Chen observed as they prepared their 7th attempt at explaining their dimensional origins. We're hardwired to keep trying to communicate. The breakthrough came on the 11th day when the axiom finally seemed to acknowledge the Prometheus as a sentient construct rather than a random phenomenon. Their response patterns shifted, becoming more directed and simplified. They're adapting to our limitations, Rise realized with excitement. They're trying to communicate back. Her expression darkened as she processed the latest exchange. They're asking why we interfered with their energy collection process. The void cascade, they call it the harvest flow, is being diverted by our arrays. Ambassador Zixthar moved forward anxiously, explained that they're destroying countless sentient civilizations. Surely once they understand. I've tried. Rise interrupted, frustration evident in her voice. They don't have a concept for what we mean by destruction or life. Their understanding of existence is fundamentally different. She brought up the translation of the axiom's latest message, a complex pattern that the ship's computers had spent hours decoding. They're saying that three-dimensional spacetime is simply an energy resource to be harvested. The concept that conscious entities exist within it is incomprehensible to them, Rise explained. It would be like us discovering that the electricity we use is somehow sentient. Captain Hassan's face hardened. Then we need to make them comprehend. Find a way, Lieutenant. The entire universe is counting on it. Dr. Chen pored over the energy readings from the axiom's harvesting process, searching for patterns that might offer a solution. The ship's common room had been converted into a makeshift research lab, with holographic projections covering every surface. For 3 days, she had barely left this space, subsisting on stimulants and protein concentrates. You need rest, Milo said, placing a fresh cup of coffee beside her. Chen shook her head, eyes never leaving the data streams. The council representatives are planning their suicide attack. We're out of time. Across the room, the alien representatives huddled in somber discussion. Their formal dignity had eroded during the mission, replaced by a fatalistic resolve. Without a diplomatic solution, they had decided to overload the Prometheus's power core in a desperate attack on the harvesting machine, a sacrifice that would accomplish nothing but gesture of defiance. There's something here, Chen muttered, highlighting a particular energy signature. The axiom aren't just harvesting raw dimensional energy. They're seeking the specific resonance pattern, extracting it from the dimensional substrate, and discarding everything else. Milo frowned, studying the highlighted data. That's incredibly wasteful. They're destroying entire regions of space-time to extract what amounts to a small percentage of specialized energy. Chen looked up, her tired eyes suddenly bright with realization. Exactly. It's like clear-cutting an entire forest to harvest a few specific trees. She called over to Rodriguez, who had been modifying the ship's communication array. I need to see the axiom's response patterns to our last communication attempt, the one where we tried to explain our concept of sustainable resources. Rodriguez pulled up the records, and Chen analyzed them intently. There, she said, pointing to a subtle shift in the pattern. They didn't dismiss our concept of sustainability. They simply couldn't conceptualize how it would apply to their harvesting process. So we show them, Milo said, catching her excitement. For the next 18 hours, Chen, Milo, and Rodriguez worked feverishly to develop a new approach. They mapped the axiom's harvesting process in exquisite detail, then designed an alternative method that would extract the desired energy without destroying the dimensional substrate. It's like comparing slash-and-burn agriculture to modern sustainable farming, Chen explained to Captain Hassan and the skeptical council representatives. Their current method yields immediate high returns but destroys the resource forever. Our approach produces less energy immediately but allows for continuous harvesting indefinitely. They won't care about preserving life, Ambassador Zixthar objected, his crystalline form dim with fatigue. No, Chen agreed, but they'll care about efficiency. Long-term, Our method produces more total energy with less effort. It's a pure mathematics argument. Hassan studied the proposal, then nodded decisively. Prepare the transmission. Using their dimensional communication system, they transmitted a complex mathematical model demonstrating their alternative harvesting technique. The energy requirements were enormous, draining the ship's reserves to dangerous levels. For 3 days, there was no response. Then on the 4th day, the Axiom responded with their own calculations, identifying flaws in the human model, but also building upon its core premise. They're engaged, Rise said wonderingly as she interpreted the response. They're actually working through the mathematics with us. Chen's team refined their approach based on the Axiom's feedback, creating an improved model that addressed the identified issues. A mathematical dialogue developed, transcending the vast gulf of understanding between species that could never truly comprehend each other's nature. They're driven by efficiency, Chen realized as she studied the increasingly detailed exchanges, not malice. They literally couldn't conceive of another approach until we showed them the mathematics. On the 9th day of this exchange, the Axiom proposed something unexpected, a small-scale test of the human method in a sector they had not yet harvested. Captain Hassan looked to Chen. Is this progress? Chen nodded, exhausted but hopeful. They wouldn't waste resources on a test if they didn't see potential merit in our approach. Mathematics may be the one true universal language after all. The Prometheus return journey through normalized space felt almost anticlimactic after the horrors they had witnessed beyond the dimensional boundary. Systems throughout the galaxy reported the same astonishing news. The void cascade was not merely halting, it was reversing. Regions of spacetime previously consumed were reappearing as the Axiom implemented their new energy cultivation methods. Standing before the Galactic Council's assembly chamber, Dr. Chen found herself momentarily overwhelmed. Representatives from over 10,000 species packed the vast amphitheater, their disparate forms creating a living mosaic of galactic diversity. Many were witnessing the miraculous return of their homeworlds from the void, populations still lost but planetary bodies restored. The Axiom continued to implement the sustainable harvesting method across all dimensions, Chen explained, her voice amplified throughout the chamber. They found our approach mathematically elegant, a concept they value above all else, what we call preservation of life, they recognize as optimization of resources. A Medusan elder raised her sensory stalks. Will they understand the concept of reparations? Trillions of sentient beings perished before this solution was found. Chen shook her head. They acknowledged the energy pattern disruption as suboptimal, but concepts like guilt or responsibility are meaningless to them. They exist primarily in dimensions where our concept of linear time doesn't apply. To them, changing their harvesting method is equivalent to error correction, not moral redemption. The High Elder's ancient voice resonated through the chamber. Then we must find our own path to healing. The universe has changed forever, both through what was lost and what was gained. She gestured toward the human delegation. Humanity has given us more than survival. They have shown us a new way of thinking, a cognitive approach we had lost over millennia of specialization. The Council's formal voting mechanism activated, its crystalline matrices linking the thoughts of thousands of representatives simultaneously. The result emerged with unprecedented unanimity. Earth is granted full Council membership, the High Elder announced, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembly. For a species less than 2 centuries into space travel to receive such recognition was unprecedented. Furthermore, the High Elder continued, the Council hereby establishes the Human Approach Initiative. This new educational paradigm will incorporate human cognitive methodologies into our scientific and diplomatic training. All Council species will send representatives to Earth to study your unique thought processes. As the assembly dissolved into excited discussions, Ambassador Zix Thar approached Chen and the human crew privately. His crystalline form now pulsed with vibrant patterns unseen during their harrowing journey. Your species accomplished something we had deemed mathematically impossible, he said, not because you possessed greater knowledge or technology, but because you possessed less certainty. Less certainty? Milo asked, confused by what seemed like criticism. The greatest barrier to discovery is not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge, Zixthar explained. Our civilizations had accumulated so much certainty over millions of years that we stopped questioning fundamental assumptions. Humanity still possesses the beginner's mind, the ability to see problems without preconceptions. Captain Hassan smiled slightly. So our greatest strength was our primitive status. Your greatest strength, Zixthar corrected, was your ability to connect ideas across disciplines, to use metaphor and analogy, to see patterns where others saw only chaos. You taught the universe's oldest civilizations that wisdom and knowledge are not always the same thing. As the humans prepared to return to Earth, Dr. Chen gazed out at the stars. Stars that would now continue to shine because humanity had refused to accept the impossible. The universe's last hope had turned out to be its youngest spacefaring species, proving that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come not from knowing all the answers, but from asking different questions.